what he spoke to Pharaoh was firstly an economic policy. And that economic policy had a program for implementation. Then there were specific wealth creation initiatives that Joseph rolled out in that same 10-minute presentation to Pharaoh. And that policy, when it was rolled out, you know what? It produced 4 key results. One result was that the people of God became stronger than all other people, materially and spiritually. Secondly, the nation where that policy operated became the strongest nation in that time. It was a policy that came out of the house of God, that came from the inspiration from our God whom we worship today. That same policy which raised Egypt. In fact, Egypt has never been greater than it rose in the days of Joseph. If you go to Egypt today, they will tell you that. They don't need to be Christians to tell you that. It's just a matter of history. That same policy also which raised up Egypt to a superpower in the whole world, coming out of the inspiration of God's people, it also produced an economy which also sustained all other nations. Now when you hear so many people speaking to say, for example, to say Africa is the breadbasket of the world, sometimes you hear them saying Zimbabwe is the breadbasket of Africa. Now it's not just hallucinations, but we need to come to a place of saying how. So the World Economic Congress has been so mobilized by God in order to deal with the hows now. How do you unlock this thing? Now, to unlock this thing is very simple. Number one is that we are not just church. God said, you shall be to me a kingdom of priests. A kingdom of priests. Now, then he also says a peculiar people. Then he also says a chosen generation. Then he also says a holy nation. Now, I'll ignore all the other words, but I'll just focus on maybe 2 phrases. Kingdom of priests. But especially kingdom. Then I'll focus on holy nation. Now, there is no kingdom which can function sustainably and survive and continue without an economy. It just does not work. It does not work. Moses knew it. Aaron knew it. They were told by Pharaoh to say, you guys, you like the Exodus so much. Go away there and have all the church services you like. But leave everything here. Moses and Aaron said, no, we will not do that. Because we can't worship this God without the economy. Yes. Actually, those 10 judgments that came upon Egypt, they were not about just letting Israel go physically, the people walking on their feet and going. Walking on their feet was permitted by Pharaoh somewhere along the line. But the challenge was to walk empty-handed. That was the center of the warfare. Because you cannot successfully worship God without the economy that worships God. Right. It's not possible. It's not possible. That's why most of our Sunday church services, they are actually not worship services of God. They are spiritual resuscitation services. Because we are dealing with people who worship God for 3 hours on Sunday morning. Then they go into an economic system which they are not in control. A system which the church is not in control. So wherever and whenever you go into places where you are completely not in control, you are either vulnerable or you are a guerrilla survivor. So most of our Christian business people, they are doing guerrilla business warfare. Yeah. Which means hit and run. Because you are not in your environment. You are not operating in an environment which you are determining where things shall go. But we can create that environment. We can create that environment. We can create an environment. Let me tell you what the Muslims do. When a Muslim starts a green grocer store selling farm produce, he does not need to pray and fast for the market. His market is already given, because the Muslims, they buy first from a Muslim. So he does not need to pray and fast for customers to come. He knows that they are already there. Now, I was giving an example last time to our program director here, and I was saying, guess what? When you were running Kingdom Bank, if the churches, if there was a kingdom of God in Zimbabwe, then you know what? The churches would have shipped. In fact, we only had about 3 or 4 banks later on, in their maximum, that were owned by believers. What we would have done, we would have just shifted all our bank accounts to the brethren, and those banks would have become the biggest banks and largest banks in this country. And we would have talked to our brothers to say, you know what, this money is now too big for you. Can we become shareholders together? Do you know, you are better off him. He was going to be better off being a shareholder. A 10% shareholder of a $4 billion enterprise than to control 90% of $20,000. You get that, Antonio? And you are better off possessing only the leg of an elephant than possessing an entire rabbit. But people walk around and say, I'm the full owner. I'm the full owner of something. But this thing which he says he fully owns, the size of it is like a cockroach. That's the size. So we are responsible for impoverishing ourselves. You see? So those banks would have been standing, all of them. They would have been the largest banks, all of them. But because there was no kingdom, now thanks be to God, via this coming together. Now this coming together, it's actually, when we are together, we are larger than every individual. That is why you actually find, I'm acknowledging certain persons here as part of the panel of conveners. I'm not the only convener. I might be the lead convener for the World Economic Congress, but I'm not the only one. When God laid the burden truly in my heart, I had to go to some people. I had to say to them, this is for all of us. Now, because for 10 years, God took me on a whirlwind all over the world, and I couldn't understand what was happening. 2005 to 2009, it was just a 5-year period. Zimbabwe passport expires, it's supposed to expire after 10 years. Mine did not expire, but the pages got finished in 5 years. And I couldn't understand why God was doing that. I remember when I went into the country, I was with Apostle Joseph Dan, when we went into the island of Trinidad and Tobago. At the immigration, I had to show the immigration officer the little portion where to stamp my passport. I mean, literally, when we came back into New York City from that island, I had to do the same because the passport was full. When I went to your country, Federal Republic of Nigeria, the city of Warri, yes, Niger Delta, I did the same at your airport in Lagos because, in fact, your place I used an emergency travel document because I needed a small window of time to apply for another passport. But what God was doing at the end of the 10 years, I then realized, okay, and it manifested when I was in Nairobi, Kenya. We were in the closing session of the International Christian Chamber of Commerce. Then I then realized God was taking me on a patrol, like the Nehemiah patrol of the walls of Jerusalem, to see how the walls of Jerusalem are broken down, and how the gates are burned with fire, and how the tombs of the fathers are lying in the open. So I saw for 8 years, out of the 10 years, for 8 years I saw how poor the Christian people are all over the world. Then for the last 2 years, I then saw how also poor, but potentially rich, the Christian marketplace forums are. We have a serious potential. We are the largest in the world. Now let me give you a very simple example of how rich we can become. In fact, this Congress, if you look at the program, it goes systematically from belief system down to policy. Tomorrow we'll be dealing with policy in the morning. Then from policy, it then goes to program. From program, it goes now to wealth creation ventures. And then from there, it goes now to say, how do we work together? How do we collaborate? Because what I found, the limitation that we were facing, or we are facing, and I was talking this to representatives of business fellowships of the churches in Harare last Saturday. I said, you know what, when I look at, and I spoke it also to the church fathers 2 weeks ago when we were together, I said, if you look at the business activities that one church is doing, times 20 churches in Harare, those activities, when they are by themselves, they are only business activities. When they are by themselves, they are only fundraising efforts of churches or income generating efforts. But when you bring them together, especially under a policy, then you are now building an economy. You are building an economy. Now in 2010, for 2 weeks, the Lord told me not to read the Bible too much during those 2 weeks. And he told me to read about Cecil John Rhodes. It was very fun. Very, very interesting. I mean, I tried all the morning devotions, they couldn't work. I tried the afternoon ones, worse. And then he started to lead me to read about this man, the efforts that he did. And then I discovered that this man did not just build a business or a company. He built an economy.
That's right.
He built an economy. And that economy meant many hands coming together. I don't care about the witchcraft and the occult foundations that was to do with it. Now, if they have witchcraft, why don't you have Holy Ghost? I mean, you see, yeah, because the Bible simply says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. Those guys, they use occultic knowledge. They were using occultic knowledge, occultic voodooism and whatever. You have Holy Ghost. So why doesn't the Holy Spirit help us? Why don't we deploy the Holy Spirit to organize ourselves? Now in Zimbabwe here, Dr. Charity Junior, she's the president of the Bankers Association of Zimbabwe. Maybe she'll visit us and be with us one of the sessions. She's a Christian sister. They know in the banking world from the days that he was chairperson of his group of banking and financial diversified services group. They say in Zimbabwe here, there is around 4 billion US dollars that is circulating, not in the formal banking system. Now, yes, 4 billion. Some of it's in your socks right now. The other is in your pillow. And so forth and so forth. The other is somewhere where you know. And so forth. Now, so the 4 billion, it's actually larger than any money in any single bank in this country. So what is it that, and out of that 4 billion, the 92.7%, according to 2012 statistics of the census of Zimbabwe, 92.7% of Zimbabwean people, they claim to be Christians. 92.7%. Now, so that 92.7%, it means they are holding maybe the 92.7% of the 4 billion. Are you understanding?
Yes.
Now, and this morning we're having the president of the Evangelical Fellowship of Zimbabwe sitting there, and Dr. Shana is the president of the Association of Evangelicals in Africa. Even if you don't talk of the Protestants, if before you talk of the Catholics, before you talk of the African independent churches, we've got Archbishop there from South Africa with a network of other churches and things like that. Now, if you just take one group to do like what Moses did and the Israelites, to say, gentlemen, in 24 hours, can you transfer your money from Egyptian homes and bring it onto one platform? Within 24 hours, we can own large-scale gold mines in Zimbabwe. Within 24 hours, we can partner the large-scale and medium-scale farming industry. We can become shareholders in the agriculture of Zimbabwe. We can own the produce of the land. Within 24 hours, we can own the largest airline in Zimbabwe, larger than Air Zimbabwe. But each one of us, none of our churches can do it single-handedly. But when we are brought together, these things become possible. So these are some of the things that Joseph worked on in order to make the Exodus possible. Now, listen to me. The Exodus was actually a potentially dangerous project if no prior homework had been done. Because just imagine if anybody of us here tries to take, not even all Zimbabweans, just try to take the people in this meeting on an adventure of a desert walk for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, in the current state that we are in. There will be famine plus weeping and gnashing of teeth within 2 weeks. You see? Now, how do people survive on and on for 40 years? Now, there was a distribution system. There was a leadership system. There was a marketplace system that was operational. And there was a